Who are the best double game week 24 players from both Liverpool and Everton? We're going to be revealing that in today's video, as well as some single game week players that you have to consider for your team. So as always, if you're looking forward to it, make sure to drop a like on this video. Aiming for 400. I know you legends can do that. And as always, if you haven't already, make sure you do smash the subscribe button for daily fantasy content. Enough waffling. Let's get into today's video. So first up, the man of the moment from game week 23, and that is going to be Liverpool's forward Cody Gakpo, off the back of that fantastic 16-point haul. And a lot of managers like myself that went for the defensive triple up of Alisson and Trent are looking a little bit silly right now off the back of that performance. But now, of course, going into double game week 24, we need to take a look at whether he is still a buy for your team. So we're going to cover off the pros, the cons, the fixtures, and of course everything else alongside that. So a quick reminder, now 7.6 million after his inevitable price rise. And we do look at the upcoming fixtures for Liverpool in general, we still have that double game week in 24. So even though Cody Gakpo had that haul in game week 23, and I know a lot of managers are probably sat there thinking, oh, I've missed the one game where he was going to get that haul, I still think there are opportunities available. And I've put this here as one of the pros. I think if you do bring in Cody Gakpo, and I still think he's a fantastic pick, he is actually a really easy hold between now and game week 28. So the double game week, while it isn't ideal, is still a double game week. And I think some managers don't think that. You're getting what I think is a guaranteed starter in both of those games based on the form that we're seeing from Cody Gakpo. So we're getting minimum 2-pointer in both games with 4 as his ceiling, and then any attacking returns alongside that. I think that really is being downplayed in the community. And then in game week 25, now I can't sit here, look at my crystal ball and tell you that he will play the Wolves game, but if you also get the Wolves game, then you are really in the money. Now, Man City away in game week 26, yes, doesn't look ideal, but would you be surprised if Liverpool were to score in that game? No. And then you get Newcastle at home and Southampton at home, and any team that visits Anfield, I always fancy them for goals. Of course, one of the cons that I've put here is of the blank in game week 29 that we do have to consider, and we'll know that during the midweek of game week 24. But regardless if you're buying Gakpo, you're buying Alisson, you're buying Trent, that potential blank game week 29 is going to happen, and I don't think that should be enough to put you off buying these sort of players. The underlying numbers of Gakpo are great: 0.46 XG per 90, 0.27 expected assists per 90. And as I mentioned, I really do think he has the highest expected minutes of all of the other attackers outside of Mo Salah. Now, what are some of the problems? Now, he has travelled to the PSV game. All of the other big guns have stayed at home, like Salah, like Van Dijk, like Trent. So it is a little bit of a worry, especially Luis Diaz also staying at home. But if you haven't made the move already, wait and see. Allow the PSV game to happen. If he plays 90 minutes, then yes, that is going to throw a few alarm bells out there. You'll be asking yourself, why is he playing the full 90 minutes? And of course, he may even get injured in that game. So hold off on those transfers until at least this evening, once we have seen that game. And of course, I've mentioned here in terms of a tricky double game week. Yes, it is tricky, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool were to score 4 goals over this double game week. So we are later on in this video going to touch on the best triple up of Liverpool. But if you're in a position right now where you own any forward, I'm going to say outside of Isak, who I would keep, and maybe Mateta, I think all other forwards that I were to own in the game, I would sell to bring in Cody Gakpo this week if it allowed you an easy way to get him. I think he is the best attacker outside of Mo Salah. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, but I think all these things are lining up for him to be a brilliant hold between now and game week 28. So from Liverpool's forward to Everton's somewhat forward, at least a forward in the FPL game, and that is going to be Ndiaye, currently priced at 5.5 million, and I believe the third most bought player going into double game week 24. Now, a few people are mentioned about a potential injury that he does have. I've mentioned this in terms of the negatives regarding him, and I do need to note that we haven't actually had any major news right now on him. It sounds like from some sources that he is going to be fine, but we haven't really got any clarification yet. And I want to get that one out of the way first and foremost, because I can't sit here and promote a player when there is that lingering thought that he could be out for the double. So just be cautious if you are looking to buy and die. I think information is power, and if you can allow yourself to not bring him in until closer to the deadline, I think that might be worthwhile. So is he actually worth a buy? Well, Of course, he has a double game week, and while one of those is Liverpool at home, which, to be honest with you, if you got 2 points in, you just be happy with, it's the Leicester game at home where managers are getting excited about this. Now, if I just took away the Liverpool game and I said to you, Ndiaye at home against Leicester, and you had a forward in your team that you were really frustrated about, let's say someone like a João Pedro, then I still think there would be some argument to maybe go for Ndiaye at his price point as an easy sideways move. But I also would argue that just the Leicester game at home isn't enough to justify bringing in Ndiaye. So we chuck Liverpool on top of that, where I think it's just a 2-pointer. Then does it actually make sense to bring him in? And I still think it is team dependent in this situation. Now, I'm going to use myself as an example. I own João Pedro, very frustrating player, and I had no money in the bank. So João Pedro to Ndiaye is actually a really simple move for my team. And a few of the reasons why. He has a double in 24, and what I do like about Ndiaye is that he then is a benchable option in foreseeable game weeks. Now, of course, this depends on your team structure, but whereas with someone like João Pedro, when you own him, you feel like you have to start him in every single game. It's just because it's João Pedro. I feel like with Ndiaye, I think naturally in FPL this season, the midfielders is exactly where the value is this year. And I think having a forward like Ndiaye will allow you to comfortably bench him whenever you choose to and play your power 5 in midfield. Of course, you might have a slightly team structure to this. And that is the reason why I do like Ndiaye. Of course, now he's the penalty taker in the team in the absence of DCL, Calvert-Lewin. And it does look like he could be out for a couple of months, which is great for Ndiaye's penalty sort of potential, but not good for Everton in general. And also the one thing I will note is, I do think with Ndiaye, the sort of player is, when he gets an attack and return, he also picks up a bonus. We haven't seen that this season, but the baseline bonus points have been really good. And I do think it's only a matter of time that if we were to see an attack and return in these upcoming games, he will inevitably pick up bonus points. I've mentioned the bit of possible injury, and I have mentioned the Liverpool in the double game week not being ideal. So I think Ndiaye is a very team-specific situation. I can't sit here right now and say to you, sell some big forwards in the game like Mateta, maybe even not Chris Wood. But if you're in a position where you own a cheap forward and you're looking to bring in somebody for this game week, I actually think Ndiaye ticks a lot of the boxes, and it's a reason why I have brought him into my team. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd be really interested to know on this one. So just to conclude the double game week 24 for Liverpool and Everton assets, I thought I'd provide you with a very, very, very detailed graphic here. No, this literally could be done by a 5-year-old, but I thought it'd be just a very easy way to display my ranking of the Liverpool and Everton assets if you were to be looking to buy them. Now, of course, it's team dependent, but first up, Liverpool. Mo Salah just so clearly number 1 and Trent number 2. There's no arguments about those ones. Now, number 3 for me is going to be Cody Gakpo. I still think he's the best pick. We've highlighted him in this video. I don't need to go into any detail about him. But with the Liverpool fixtures coming up, with Bournemouth away, with City away, I think there could be some goals conceded by Liverpool in those games. And I think I'd much rather have a double up in the attack and try and chase the goals as opposed to having double Liverpool defence. Now, if I was to go for a defender or a goalkeeper, hence why Van Dijk is 4 on this list, it would right now be Van Dijk. And let me kind of caveat this by saying, the reason why Alisson isn't on this list is because we now know that Fabianski potentially has lost his place in this West Ham team. And if you're in a position where Fabianski is your reserve goalkeeper and you were to bring in Alisson, if in game week 29 Liverpool do blank, you are going to be stuck without a goalkeeper. Now, I'm in that position, but because I've got 4 transfers in the bank, I don't really care because I can sell Alisson in game week 29 happily as long as I have those transfers available. And you will need to have that in the back of your mind if that blank game week 29 does happen. And it's a reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend Alisson. And I do just prefer Van Dijk over Konate because of that historical record of injuries with Konate. We could easily see one benching along the way, and we just simply don't want that. Now, in terms of Everton, I think Pickford is the goalkeeper to go for. Mainly the reason what I said about Liverpool blanking in 29 possibly, it now kind of jumps Pickford ahead of Alisson as the pick, and I just think he's a really good goalkeeper for FPL context. Number 2 is going to be Ndiaye, just because I can't get behind the double Everton defence. I think it's great for this week, and then beyond that, I think it could cause headaches. So I do like Ndiaye, but of course we have touched on the reasons why you would and wouldn't bring him into your teams. Number 3 then is going to be Mykolenko, just because he's 4.4 million, really, really cheap. Again, I don't love the Everton double up, but if you're in a position where you have a really cheap defender, he looks terrible this week, I'm not against doing a sideways move to Mykolenko, starting him in 24, and then have him as your 5th defender each and every week if you require that. 4th for Everton, I can't lie, I could have picked anyone here because I don't think there is a 4th Everton. Is going to be Doucouré. Now, I haven't seen the numbers to even get excited about. I mean, I have seen the numbers, but there are no numbers to really get excited about. I do think with Doucouré that he could do well under Moyes. I think we haven't seen it yet, but it's been a small sample size. And at 4.1 million, it could actually resolve a midfielder problem in your team. But with so many great midfielders in the game right now, I just don't think you're going to want to look at Doucouré after double game week 24 as a pick. So that's my ranking. Let me know yours in the comments. Now, I know game week 24 is a double game week for Liverpool and Everton, but it is really important to not be blindsided by the double game week. Yes, you need to prioritise triple Liverpool and maybe 1 Everton, maybe 2 at most. But that also shouldn't be at the detriment of some other transfers for your team. And there are some great teams still to target who don't double in game week 24. And there is a lot of movement towards the Bournemouth trio of midfielders that we have on the screen here. And that is going to be Ouattara off the back of that hat-trick in game week 23, 5 million, ridiculous price point. Then we got Semenyo at 5.6 million. I'm going to say the one who has been spoken about consistently throughout the season, but maybe not delivered the points that we were hoping for. And then we've got the new star boy in Kluivert, 5.7 million. The hat-trick in game week 22, followed up by that amazing performance in game week 23, and kind of now really standing out as the go-to midfielder going into game week 24 outside of course, Liverpool and Everton. So I want to touch on right now, can we look to buy them in game week 24? And if so, who should we be bringing in? Or can we double up on them? So firstly, let's take a look at the fixtures, because I think that's really important right now. Going into game week 24 at home against Liverpool is not ideal at all. However, if you're in a position where you're looking to free up some funds, maybe come off a midfielder down to the price point of 5 to maybe 6 million, would you be surprised if Bournemouth were to score a goal or 2 against Liverpool in the form that they're in right now? I don't think anybody would. This is going to be a real acid test for both Liverpool and Bournemouth, because if Bournemouth do put up a fantastic performance against Liverpool, then they do look like the real deal going into this back end of the season, where we could see a real Europa League charge from them. But regardless, whatever happens in that Liverpool game, I don't think we can really judge this Bournemouth trio. 5 million, 5.6 and 5.7 for some players that are putting up amazing numbers, and we'll touch on in a minute, cannot be sniffed at. And game week 25 away against Southampton, everybody's going to want a piece of Bournemouth. And even Wolves in game week 26 is fantastic. And I look at the rest of the games, Brighton, Spurs, Brentford. Regardless of what you think about the fixture of game week 24, you're going to want a Bournemouth midfielder from game week 25 onwards. And that's a reason why I would not be put off bringing him in this week. Now, who is the one to buy? Well, in terms of XG per 90 minutes, Ouattara is leading the way. 0.58 per 90, doesn't take penalties, so his XG non-pen is 0.58 per 90. It's ridiculous. And he has actually played more minutes than I expected, 1,150. Not the same level as Kluivert, considerably less than that of Semenyo. And that is the one red flag that I have right now with Ouattara, is when we do start to get some players back like Tavernier, who is the first player that could come out of this team? And with Kluivert now on penalties, and of course just being an absolute key cog of the system right now, I do feel like Ouattara could be the one to be sacrificed early on once we do get the players back. So at 5 million, if you can't afford Semenyo or Kluivert, I think Ouattara is an amazing pick. But just be cautious that maybe by the time we get to game week 26, he could be the one coming off after 55 minutes, which is not an ideal position to be in. So I think it does come down to Semenyo versus Kluivert. And when we do look at Kluivert's numbers, I think the big thing that we need to remember is his XG per 90 is fantastic at 0.55, but it's his XG non-pen, which is a slight concern, at 0.27 per 90. Now, of course, we have to skew it a little bit by saying that he is playing slightly differently in the absence of Evan Nielsen, and since then he has been phenomenal. But I don't really want to judge him just based on 2 game weeks as a data size. It's just not enough. But now that we have the injury to Evan Nielsen, and I feel like Kluivert is really stepping up in this team, I can't see him suddenly becoming maybe a 60-minute man once again that we saw previously, unless his fitness levels just aren't there. And being on penalties, I feel like Kluivert is considerably better than that of Semenyo. The price point is basically identical. Yes, Semenyo has better numbers in terms of non-pen XG, but we can't just discard the fact that Kluivert has penalties. It's actually a real great way for avenues for points. Maybe let's say Bournemouth have a terrible game. All it takes is a penalty and Kluivert is scoring and in and amongst the bonus points. So if I was to rank them, I actually think the price points kind of rank themselves. I think Kluivert is number 1. I think Semenyo is number 2. And Ouattara is number 3, just because of that slight doubt that minutes could be at risk as we progress throughout the fixtures. And I absolutely do think Bournemouth are a good buy for Game Week 24. So for the final part of this video, I wanted to take a look at a certain Bryan Mbeumo, who is getting even more popular as we progress into double game week 24. And of course, that is off the back of that penalty that he controversially scored in game week 23 after being allowed to retake it. But regardless, we knew that Mbeumo was a fantastic FPL option in the game. A lot of us moved away from him at times, and we've been scratching our heads why the hell we done that. Now, I'm one of those managers that did, but I did bring in Gordon, and he has ticked over fantastically in the meantime. His points have been consistent while not necessarily having those huge double-digit returns, but it feels like he's actually been a little bit unlucky, and at times we could have had those big double-digit returns, and we're going to see that in the underlying numbers here. But the big question going into game week 24 right now, and it isn't just Gordon, it's other picks. I'm going to put up the transfer combinations here going into game week 24. You can see here, 27% of the buys for Mbeumo are coming from Gordon. We've got 20% from Ismaila Sarr, who have the money available, 13% from Bruno Fernandes, and then even 5% from Phil Foden. So you can see here, Bryan Mbeumo is being bought by managers with cheap picks and also expensive picks. And I think that is the big thing about Bryan Mbeumo, is that he ticks all of the boxes. He offers guaranteed game time on penalties, good underlying numbers, and decent long-term fixtures. So I can see the attraction for him regardless of what player you do own currently in game week 24. The one right now that I'm going to highlight is going to be Anthony Gordon, because he has the best underlying numbers of all the ones that we've kind of suggested in the transfer combination section. And he is one of the most sold going into game week 24. So when we look at the underlying numbers first and foremost, XG per 90 is identical, 0.42 for both. But of course, we need to take into account here that Mbeumo's has penalties involved. All of Gordon's is non-pen XG, which is really, really exciting to see and promising as a pick. Shots per 90 in Gordon's favour as well, while they are slightly on target for Mbeumo, and you got to hit the target to score goals at the end of the day. But in terms of shots in the box, slightly in Gordon's favour, and creativity, pretty identical, just in Mbeumo's at 0.26. So when I look at those numbers right now, I do ask myself, why am I, as a person who owns Gordon, considering selling him this week? And I think it's because of what we know Mbeumo can do and the fact that he's on penalties. Now, when we look at the fixtures right now, I actually would argue game week 24 is pretty identical for both. Brentford at home against Spurs. Spurs' form is terrible right now, and I think we are maybe all wanting to have a piece of Brentford just because Spurs are that bad, not necessarily because we think Brentford are that good. And then in game week 25 away against West Ham, who are improving under Graham Potter, it is worth noting. And then they have got Leicester, Everton, Villa, and then of course the game in 29 away against Bournemouth. Now when we take a look at Newcastle, I think the Fulham at home game isn't bad. I never look at Fulham and think they're going to get battered. So I don't think the ceiling is as high as that of Brentford's in game week 24. And then we got the tricky games of City, Forest, Liverpool, West Ham away we'll put in the same bracket as what I mentioned about Brentford. And then a potential blank in game week 29 that of course we do need to highlight. So coming into this specific game week, I don't think it's just as easy as sell Gordon, buy Mbeumo. I think it is actually quite a luxury move. If you're sat there right now with 4 free transfers, I think you're inevitably going to want Mbeumo, maybe from game week 25 onwards. And if you are concerned about the overall ownership, because of course if Mbeumo does well, it does hurt the rank, then I can get behind the move. But if you're sat there right now with 1 free transfer, maybe haven't got the full double game week players that you want, absolutely keep Gordon this week. It's a good fixture, his underlying numbers are fantastic. And then you can reassess in game week 25 when Gordon plays away against Man City. And even then you might want to keep Gordon. I think the conclusion that I've come to is that you're going to want Mbeumo at some point regardless. So now it comes down to your team structure and your transfers available. In my situation where I've got 3 free transfers, I do feel the temptation to go from Gordon to Mbeumo, because if he does well in this Spurs fixture, it's going to hurt the overall rank, and it's also going to mean a price rise once again, potentially up to 8 million. I can't really afford that in my team. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but both are brilliant this week. Yes guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's double game week 24 video looking at the best players to buy. Hopefully I've covered off most of them, but if I haven't and you have any questions, please don't hesitate, put them in the comments section. I'll be sure to get to them. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, please do consider smashing that like button and of course hitting that subscribe button for daily fantasy content. I will see you in tomorrow's video where we'll be looking at a game week 24 preview and my team selection on Friday. Take care, have a great day. Cheers.